Welcome back, people. Today on the show we have the long-lasting beast of a CPU that is called the i5 2500K. Did it survive the test of time, or will it crumble against the overwhelming power of AMD CPUs in recent years? Stick around to find out. Okay, let's start with a little bit of a history lesson. It's the early 2009 and Intel and AMD are fighting fiercely. Intel is stranded on their last attempt in squeezing everything they can out of the LGA 775 platform, with their Core 2 duos and quads from the 9000 series. And AMD is putting out a lot of good CPUs, mostly the Phenom and Phenom 2 X4s. The market is very competitive, but there are a lot of rumors about a new architecture by Intel that can destroy AMD. And soon, in September of the year 2009, the Blue Team delivers, somewhat, by launching the first generation of the i-series CPUs, more exactly the i7 870 and the i5 750 on the brand new LGA 1156 socket. They managed to snag the performance crown, and with the launch of the X58 chipset and the accompanying respective chips, the tides start to shift in their favor. The next January in 2010, Intel completes their portfolio of silicon by adding the i3 series CPU and other less important products. March comes around and Intel decides to shock the market by launching the first 6-core consumer CPU under the name of the i7 980X, built on their new 32nm process. This CPU will remain the king of performance until the successor, the i7 990X, comes out to market early next year. But something happens. The new architecture, known as Sandy Bridge, is launched in January, and this is where our story starts. The 2500K and the legend were born. Right from the beginning, both reviewers and AMD knew that this was a product to stay. The 2500K was constructed on the new 32nm node, and it had killer performance. It launched at a price at $216 for an overclocking part, which was a really good deal considering that this silicon could go up to 5 GHz on water. This was one of the best CPUs Intel ever made, and this is proven by the sheer amount of them on the second-hand market. This CPU was so popular and so powerful that even 5 generation newer i5 7600K could not beat it by more than 20-30%, making a 2500 one of the best investments you could have ever made in the year 2011. Yet here we are at the middle of 2020, more than 9 years after the CPU, but has this hold up? The answer would have been yes, all the way up to 2017. But the launch of Ryzen shook the industry, and now more cores actually matter. The Ryzen 5 is now considered as the next 2500K because it provides exceptional performance for the money. But let's get back to our chip. Before getting into the benchmarks, a quick summary of the hardware used. The CPU is socketed in an ASUS P8 P67M Pro with 16GB of Kingston HyperX memory, 1866 MHz with a CAS of 11. The CPU itself is overclocked to 4.4 GHz with an offset voltage of 0.03 volts. This is less than an easy overclock and very obtainable. The cooler used is an RTX Freezer Extreme, and the GPU that we're going to use is an RX 580 8GB from Gigabyte. Okay, now we are done with that. Let's get into the numbers. First on the list is Cinebench. Here tested in R15 and R20, both single and multi. The scores are reasonable, with 584 points for all cores and 152 points for the single, and quite close to the stock Ryzen 3 1300X. In R20, this changes because the CPU does not have the newest AVX2 instruction set, and the benchmark is still using it. It still managed to get 12,000 points for multi and 300 and a bit in single. In the CPU's in-house benchmark, we get more than reasonable 441 points for one thread and 1747 for all. This actually beats out a 7600 non-K in this benchmark. In 3D Mark, I tested this chip in DynSpy and Firestrike. It both scored a little low, therefore showing its age. It got 2881 points or 9.68 frames in high spy and 7343 points or 23.41 FPS in fast strength. Okay, let's get in some games. First up, Call of Duty Modern Warfare Warzone. And here we can see it manages to hold an average of over 60 FPS at 1080p high, but it has a 0.1% of 30-ish, which indicates a level of stutter. It could not get any overlay to work on the CPU after a new Windows installed, but I have the older numbers. CSGO would not fire up for whatever reason, although I think you will get over 200 FPS or so. In Rainbow Six Siege, we have a more than decent 191 FPS average in the new game benchmark, as you can see on the screen. With a minimum of 151 FPS, there was no stutter to speak of and a very good competitive experience. Overall, I was pleasantly surprised of this old 4-core CPU that what could do in a very popular title. Next up is Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which was mostly GPU bound, except for the last part of the benchmark. When we look at the CPU and GPU render, we see that both are very consistent and paired well. In Doom Eternal, both Radeon overlay and Windows game bar were broken, so I had just the gameplay not representative of the real result. Here we can see the 2500K had no problems at all handling this game at 1080p medium settings with over 110 FPS per second, but they had drops but nothing below 50 FPS, so I recommend capping the game at 60 for a consistent experience. To continue with GTA 5, where we got a solid 81.2 FPS averaged over 5 passes, and the minimum in the 40-55 FPS range with the 3 and 16 FPS results not representative, caused by loading and other things. Very playable and enjoyable. The next game we are looking at is The Division. Here in the in-game benchmark we get a solid 81.4 FPS average with the GPU usage average at 95%. Fact that indicates we are presented with a clear GPU limit. The RX 580 is still pretty powerful GPU in 2020 and seems to be a good combo with the 2500K. It would probably be better paired with first or second generation Ryzen to smooth up the experience, but it's still a good showing for the 2500K. Overall, this chip surprised me, as it could totally hold up in 2020 if paired with a decent GPU, as the RX 580 here. It clearly shows that quad cores for a budget are still an option. I have to remind the viewer that this can be bought for very little with a good Z68 or P67 chipset or the later Z77. With this combo, an average user can overclock to more than 4.5 GHz provided they have adequate cooling. In my testing, this CPU can draw upwards to 125 watts on a full load overclocked, so beefy air cooler or a 120mm or 240mm AIO would help keep the temperature under 85 to 90 C, which is the sweet spot for this silicon. This is almost equivalent to a relatively new i3 8100, a budget option to get into PC gaming. So in conclusion, this old boy can still hang up in 2020 and maybe a couple years more until it will finally rest among other PC hardware legends. I hope you found this video useful, and if you want more, make sure to hit that button and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.